Hi, my name is Tracy Hughes. I'm a Master of Public Health student at Liberty University. I'm completing my Health 698 Practicum project, where I chose to address the public health impact of COVID-19 and the reduction of transmission by using infection control practices in a school setting. The impact goal that I chose to implement was an evidence-based practice for hand hygiene program for the students, teachers, and teachers' assistants, and a screening protocol for staff who choose to enter the school building. These two infection control measures aim to decrease COVID-19 exposure. They will help prevent subsequent infections among students, staff, in the community. Next slide. I chose to complete my practicum at Glenwood Elementary School in Chapel Hill, North Carolina. This is a diverse school with 424 students, with approximately 41% Caucasian, 38% Asian, 7% African American, 5% Hispanic. There's approximately 53% males and 47% females. We have 85 full-time staff. During this school year, during the COVID-19 pandemic, our students were remote learning, where teachers had limited access to the buildings as well. The public health practicum competencies that I chose to address were to assess the population needs of the school and the capacities that affect our community health in regards to COVID-19, to design a population-based program and intervention, which would be my hand hygiene project and the screening tool that we implemented. I wanted to communicate with my audience appropriate health content in regards to hand hygiene in both writing and oral communication. I also chose to employ an evidence-based and culturally appropriate method to plan and implement the health intervention that I chose. We are a Mandarin immersion school, so we do have a very diverse background as far as culture in our school and as far as languages. I needed to demonstrate appropriate effective communication and advocacy skills when interacting with all of my students and staff in the context of my health promotion activity of hand hygiene and staff screening. Next slide, please. So the first two SMART goals that I had chosen to develop were addressed the employee self-screening station and attestation form, to develop a tool to help assess the staff that enter the school building and measure that by the data that's collected onto a Google spreadsheet. I wanted to have 75% of the staff that entered the building use a self-screening assessment prior to entering the school building, and I was able to meet these two SMART goals. However, there were some difficulties along the way. First, I set up a screening station at the entrance of the building that notified staff to stop and the procedure to follow while entering the building, including wearing their mask, sanitizing their hands, taking their temperature, and completing the COVID attestation form, which was provided from our district. However, we developed a Google form so that our staff could readily access that without having to use a paper form or a shared computer. That way they could do it upon entering the building very quickly. We tied that to a QR code in order to capture the data onto a spreadsheet for potential contact tracing and to serve as data collection for me to evaluate my SMART goals. Next slide. And as you can see in the top graphic, the use of the employee attestation form did increase from September 1st until November the 6th. I had originally wanted to compare the badge swipes to the attestation form, but was unable to obtain that much data from the school district safety officer. However, I was able to complete direct observation, which is the gold standard for evaluations on Wednesdays of each week, that provided limited data. I chose this day because Wednesdays were scheduled as an asynchronous learning day for our students where they were learning at home without the instruction of a teacher. And this freed up teachers to have more movement in and out of the classroom, come to school to gather their supplies and things like that. So there was more traffic on Wednesdays, which gave me a golden opportunity to observe the use of that attestation station. So during this time, there were 70 entries into the building on these Wednesdays, with 54 attestation responses collected onto our data sheet. I was able to directly observe 28 of the staff stop and utilize that attestation screening station, and 16 did not. However, they could have accessed the form online prior to coming into the building and was able to safely bypass that station. There were also 12 staff that used the attestation form, but their times were before 8 a.m. or after 3 p.m., and that was not included in my data analysis. I had a 77% rate of usage on Wednesdays, which met the goal, but was not as high as I would have liked. It was encouraging to see the increased use of the attestation form over the time period and the close correlation of the responses to enter the building. The QR code was a great asset linked to the Google form. Staff were able to use their personal phones to access the form without having to touch any computers or pens, papers, things like that. However, it was at first just tied to the Chapel Hill Carver City School emails, and I had to modify that to accept outside emails, as most staff were on their personal devices. In January, we plan to use a QR code that is smaller and laminated, placed on their badge card so that they can easily utilize that form from any entrance that they use into the building. Next slide. My third and fourth SMART objectives were created around the idea that I wanted to promote good hand hygiene and perform a hand hygiene lesson to be pressed into the classes as part of my teaching in preparation for when we do come back to school. I was able to meet my SMART goals on this and press into 75% of the students' classrooms while they were there. I had a 94.6 success rate in reaching all of the students, teachers, and teacher assistants. This was the fun part of my project. As the school nurse, it was very difficult to connect with students in a virtual setting where their schedules are packed back to back with mandatory curriculum, but I had full support of my administration, staff, and teachers were very supportive in letting me schedule into their morning meeting times and small group lessons. However, we did have a few things that I noticed on my evaluation, so I had to add a few more classes in order to get all of the students the opportunity to participate. I developed the hand hygiene package, which included an interactive Google slideshow, Q&A. Students were able to take turns answering questions, giving me fun feedback, what they thought the answers were. It was very interactive. Students stayed engaged. The video demonstrations were geared towards a K2 cohort or a 3-5 cohort, depending on what they preferred as well for grades 3 and 4. Baby Shark was a very big hit with our kindergarten first grade. The hand hygiene wash wrap was preferred by the 4th and 5th graders. However, they did like the opportunity to vote which one they wanted. We found that later on in the semester that they like to have that kind of influence on what they did, which game they played, and which video demonstration that they wanted to participate in. The Google slides that I used were very simple with wording and pictures for all grade levels and those with limited English. Since 38% of our students are Asian, we are a Mandarin immersion school, the teacher or lecturer assisted the students in Mandarin if needed. And we did have just one student with some limited English, but the pictures were sufficient for the student to understand even in this remote setting. Next slide. And I was able to meet the SMART objectives, as I mentioned before, and implement my program very quickly. The 94.6% success rate included 463 students, teachers, and TAs, and we were able to meet that rate with a 438 participant for each class. As you can see in the top graphic, the whole class participation data and the distribution of the whole class for a Kahoot or a quizzes online evaluation. So the top graphic shows the different whole group classes. I did notice during my data analysis that small groups did not have as much participation as they were not mandatory, and students did not have good attendance. The data for the distribution of the Kahoot and the quizzes was almost even. There was about 10% students who did not participate, and that was due to technical issues. They couldn't get online, couldn't follow the link, had some technical difficulties, but we very quickly learned to bypass those kind of dilemmas by just having students hold their fingers up in front of the camera to pick which picture they wanted, or if they were old enough to type in the chat, then they were able to type their answer in the chat so that they could still participate with my presentation, but not delay the time frame that we had for the class. My program was adapted many times with the input of the teachers and the students to fine-tune my use of the virtual platform Google Meet. Sometimes the videos were very glitchy. The students encouraged me and each other to turn off their mics, turn off their cameras. Miss Tracy, please present with the Google Chrome feature for your audio. It might help. They volunteered to share my screen or post my links in the chat, so that was very helpful in my learning process. They learned quickly from each other. I learned quickly from them that they did like that option to vote. They also liked to win the vote and be in the group of the preferred activity that we did. The 12 small group lessons for 4th and 5th grade, as I said before, did not have good attendance, but I was, however, able to schedule at the very last minute to meet that November 20th deadline of having all the students exposed to the hand hygiene lesson. Next slide. The students were encouraged to send me videos in order to show me their expert skills for evaluation, and later plan to compile into a hand washing promotion video showing our Glenwood hand hygiene skills. I've gotten 20 videos so far. Once we return to in-person learning, one of my main goals is to test the students' skills using the black light and the glow germ lotion. And I was able to use this technique with one student while maintaining, social distancing and using a mask for the presentation purposes. The students are encouraged to continue their practicing of their proper hand hygiene techniques to decrease the opportunity for COVID-19 to spread throughout our school setting and back into our community when we come back to school in January. Children will improve their hand washing skills through practice and need to have the encouragement and opportunities in order to perform at the critical moments throughout the day, which our staff are going to be on a very rigorous schedule to offer more bathroom breaks and hand washing prior to lunches and things like that. Our Glenwood Elementary School practice the promotion of health measures to control the spread of COVID-19, such as the hand washing, respiratory etiquette, mask, and social distancing. Next slide. One of my biggest rewards of this practicum experience was the impact that I had in my personal school community. Hearing kindergartners say things like, when you rinse your hands, the germs slide off into the sink and down the drain and into the ocean was priceless. I used that quote several times with my older kids, I would say, and our kindergartners say that when this happens, and they were really engaged. Our children have a very big community, and they're all very involved with each other when they're in school. And our older grades, the fifth graders, they mentor to our younger students. So they were really excited to hear what their younger classmates and students in the school were saying about the project that I presented to them. I was impressed when a student asked, well, when are we going to talk about bacteria? And Nurse Tracy, did you know that soap is like surfactant and it makes stuff slippery? And I was blown away by some of the big terminology that they were using, that they were all very well prepared to answer my questions. They all seemed to know what to do. And even though they had some step backs in the sequence and the steps, they kind of knew exactly what to expect and where I was going with my conversations. Being able to experience this and be a welcome part of each class was very valuable to me. As a school nurse, as I said, it's been challenging since March, and this process has given me a chance to enter the classrooms and really connect with my students. It has given me a front edge for preparation. I can already say that my training and my hand hygiene class for my students has put us well above all, in front of all the nurses in my district, and hopefully they will also use my program to implement in their schools once it is approved by our board. We have also begun to reach goals to decrease the spread of COVID-19 in our school setting when our students come back to Glenwood Elementary, and that has made me feel very blessed. It has made me feel very valuable as part of our staff, and it has helped me feel that I'm advocating for the health of our students and our community. So I really feel that this practicum experience has had a big impact on me and my students and will be very valuable in the future. Thank you for your time.